My 2014 Jeep Wrangler decided to start spitting liquid fire. It was a gas leak. The car literally almost killed me. And nobody loved this car more than I did, but I figured it's a time for a new vehicle. This video is about actual calculations about the difference between keeping your existing car, buying a new one for cash, finance, or lease. And spoiler alert, even though the lease payment was the lowest per month, in a scope of 4 years, that's the time frame I was looking at, it was almost $16,000 more expensive versus paying for a car cash. So follow along, it's a pretty detailed video with a lot of math, but I didn't find any other more exciting way to do it. So because there is quite a few numbers here, I have to switch to the computer so I can have some slides to show to you. And if it's a new subject to you, don't worry so much about calculating it, but rather focus on what goes behind the numbers, because I'm going to give you a link to a calculator where pretty much you plug in the numbers and all of the calculations are done for you. You just need to understand what numbers you need to know. The time frame I was looking at was 48 months, and I was calculating whether I should keep my own Wrangler or buy a new Grand Cherokee. And if you're wondering why I switched from Wrangler to Grand Cherokee, this is a long story, might be a topic for another video. The presentation starts with a summary. If you don't have time, you'll see the numbers right away, but then as we go along, we're going to go back to the slides so you know exactly how we came up with these numbers. So the first column is keep existing car, and you see that even with existing car, it still costs me more than $700 to keep it, and it's because there's still depreciation, gas, insurance, and with this car, there's a lot of repairs as well. Then buying the new car cash, you'll see the total price and big portion of it is just larger depreciation. There's some other aspects we'll look at. You'll see the difference with keeping the existing car. It's $289, even though the new car will cost me $1,000 per month to maintain, and that's without financing it. If you look at finance and we look at the same column, it's $350, and the only difference here is finance cost. But you also see the monthly payment, so that's pretty much $778 if I would have taken a loan for the difference between the Wrangler and whatever I need to pay to the dealership. My payment would be almost $800 per month. And then the last column is lease, and the funny thing here is the monthly payment is $400, which is almost 100% less than the finance payment, but in 48 months the total cost is $64,000, which is almost $16,000 higher than $48,000 when you pay cash. So your model is always as good as the assumptions or the numbers that you plug in. The more accurate the numbers, the more accurate is the model. The calculation itself is easy. Again, I'll give you a calculator. It'll take you a minute and two to plug everything in. So I really encourage you to spend a lot of time to research your numbers to make sure they're as accurate as possible. So I start with assumptions on my current car, and it's Jeep Wrangler. It spends 13 liters per 100 kilometers. That's the Canadian way to calculate gas mileage. The insurance is $1,800, and obviously those are all actual numbers because I have them. The odometer is around 60,000 miles, so 86,000 kilometers. And now this is the key assumption, that the market price is around $25,000. And the way I came up with that figure is by looking at Auto Trader to see for how much those vehicles get traded, and they traded about $30,000. And of course I know there is no way I can sell the car for the same as the dealer does, and also I would need to pretty it up before I sell it. It will take me a lot of time, so this is the figure I was comfortable with. And I also looked at black book value, and I even tried to get an appraisal from a dealer. The depreciation is 12%. I got to it by looking at tables, the research. This is the lowest depreciated car in Canada. And also what I did is I took the new Wrangler and I looked at 14 Wranglers, look at the difference in price, and figure out what's the depreciation per year. Now, maintenance is a big figure here because the more or less you put in, your total price for 4 years will drastically change. And for me, that was a conservative number because I already had quite a few repairs. I had to fix the gas leak, it almost killed me. Before that, it was the oil leak. And because the car is approaching like a major service, we would have to change the timing belt, water pump, and probably other bushings and components. So for me, like 2000 was a conservative estimate. And there was also emotional part. I do love the car, but it's pretty rusty underneath, and it was a gas leak. So, you know, this is pros and cons you gotta weigh in. So with all of those assumptions, I was able to calculate the cost of keeping the car, and that's the first column that you saw in the summary table. And the maintenance, as you see, is 8,000. It's pretty much 2,000 multiplied by 4. The gas is taking your average kilometers, multiplying by your gas mileage. The insurance is actual. The depreciation is 12%. You can see that even with the lowest depreciated car in Canada in 4 years, this is the depreciation is your biggest expense. Once you add it all up, it ends up $34,347. If I would sell the car after 4 years, I probably could get $13,500 maybe. Like, nobody knows really what's gonna happen in 4 years. So if you take all of your total costs and divide it by 48, you get to $716 of what it takes me right now to keep the existing car. So it's not, even though it's my car, it's paid for, I have pretty cheap insurance for Canadians, it's a least depreciated car in Canada, it still costs you $716 just to keep it. So for the new car, I was again looking at Grand Cherokee because it was actually a little bit cheaper than the new Wrangler. And it's Grand Cherokee Overland. Based on their estimates and what I talked to people and I looked at the forums, it does spend more on gas, so it's like 15 liters per 100 kilometers, and that's estimated. The insurance is the same, and to get to that, I actually called my insurance agent just to see if there is any difference. And literally, I had to add like $50 to get the insurance, that if in 2 years the car gets totaled, I'd get the total value, not minus the depreciation. So it's pretty much the same price. The market price for it right now is $53,000, and again, I got to it by looking at AutoTrader and just to see what really I can get, because sometimes you get like really low price on AutoTrader and then those cars like never exist. You come to the dealership and they're like, oh, we sold it yesterday, but we have this. So I try to find just like a price. If I don't negotiate, I just go in and I buy it. Like, that's probably the price I can get, even though MSRP is around $70,000. The depreciation is higher, and again, to calculate that, I looked at the AutoTrader, the new cars versus the cars in 4 years, and calculated that in 4 years they basically lost 60% of their value, which is insane. So in 4 years, 60%, that's 15% per year. And from the dealership website, or rather from the Jeep website, I got the finance rate of almost 4% and the lease rate of almost 6%. I also looked at the lease, and I figured that the residual value, that if you lease the car for 4 years, the buyout value, they calculated 40%, which funny enough, it's exact same as I calculated with the depreciation. So they're saying 4 years the car will lose 60% of value, and the lease, like that's what the residual value tells you, says the same thing, that in 4 years your car will be only worth 40% of what you paid for it right now. So the next thing I did is calculate the new car ownership cost, and with cash and finance, it's pretty much exact same story. It's just in finance you have the interest cost at 4% finance charge. So maintenance is lower because you don't have to make as many repairs to the new car, because obviously it's under the warranty, but you still have a lot of maintenance, especially if you want to buy winter tires. And because the engine I was looking for is V8, it just requires more service. You spend more on gas, and I know a lot of people really concentrate on gas, but if you look at the scope of things of everything you spend on the car, you can see that the difference in the gas expense is actually one of the least important factors here, and obviously the biggest factor is still the depreciation. So insurance is the same pretty much as it was for the Wrangler, and then where you take the biggest hit with a new car is depreciation per year. And the more expensive the car is, the more luxurious car is, the higher those numbers will be, because Grand Cherokee relatively doesn't start that high, and when you get it at a discount, your depreciation is a bit lower. But if I was looking at BMW X5 or Range Rovers, those numbers would be huge. So again, we total everything up. It's $48,000 in 4 years with remaining equity. Like, that's what I'm assuming. I could probably sell the car in 4 years for around $20,500, and so the expense is $1,005 per month versus $716 that I had with keeping the Wrangler. And the finance is exact same calculations. You just add $2,888, and that would be the finance charge if I take it for 4 years at 4%. So that's an extra cost, and in total it will end up at $51,000. So the next thing I did is calculate the lease cost for 48 months, and to get to the lease payments, I just used their own website to get to the payment, because every company calculates the lease payments a little bit differently, so it's important to get them as accurate as possible. So I assume my trade-in would be at $22,000 because the market value is $25,000, and there's no way the dealership will give you the market value. They'll always give you a little bit lower, because you usually get tax benefit because you pay less sales tax. So from your perspective, the $22,000 might be like $23,000 or $24,000, depending what's the sales tax in your state or province. So lease payments, I pretty much calculated the lease payments on their website, and then you just multiply it by 48, and then you have the gas, maintenance, and insurance per year. And I actually kind of underestimated the numbers here, because with the lease you're responsible for every scratch and dent and ding, so sometimes you actually have to buy a higher level of insurance, or you need more maintenance just to make sure that they accept the car when you bring it back. So the total cost went up to like a whopping $64,100. So again, even though the payment was only $400 a month, in total, in 4 years, lease is so expensive. Even if you compare it to finance, it's almost $12,000 more expensive. So when we talked in the previous video about the benefits of the lease, how the car is not yours, and they'll have to kind of take it back if something happens with the car, I don't think $12,000 is worth that benefit. So again, coming back to the summary, and that's what we started with. Now you know how I came up with all of these numbers. So the current car is $716 per month. If I would buy one for cash, my difference would be $290 pretty much. If I would finance it, it would be $350, and that's the only numbers I really looked at, because it's important for me to know not just what's my monthly payment or how much does it cost, what's the difference with current situation, because again, the current car is not free to keep, and with the lease the difference again is like super big, like almost $620. That's like 2 cars together pretty much. So what actually happened? And again, the cars have a major impact on your financial health, and usually the best thing to do is not to get a new car, or get a smart car that doesn't depreciate a lot, doesn't break. But there is also emotional part to that equation, and I happen to be a person that really loves the cars, and I'm willing to spend more money and affect my financial position, but I'm doing it knowing every single number that goes into owning the car. So the MSRP was $70,000 almost. My discount was more than $20,000, and that was a combination of the manufacturer discount, dealer discount, and me spending like 3 hours in a dealership negotiating. And by the way, the next video is going to be about negotiating and the buying process, and once you know your numbers, what do you do with them. So the price was $49,900. They gave me for my trade-in $21,900, which if you look at my previous slide, you will see that I was only $100 off in my assumption and calculations. So that made me pretty happy that my research paid off and I had the realistic figure. So the sales tax, again, pretty much what you do is you subtract the trade-in from the price. So this gets subtracted from this, and then you add your sales tax. So the balance due was $31,907, $32,000. However, because I own a business and I use the car for business to go meet with my clients and do my rounds, a lot of the sales tax I can write off. And that's why with the tax savings, the balance that I was really looking at is $28,000. So with those are the real now numbers. To keep the current car, it would have been $716. I don't know how many times I said that figure today. With a new car, buying it cash, because I did have cash to buy it, I didn't really want to finance it. At 4%, it kind of seems high. If it was like 0.9 or 1%, probably I would have financed and used the money to invest. But at 4%, it's really hard to find something to invest at 4% that is kind of a sure deal. So then the difference per month became $242, and so I ended up being pretty okay with paying extra $242 per month on the brand new Grand Cherokee. The family seems to like it. It's more comfortable for them than the Wrangler. I still miss the Wrangler. The story here is not about the Wrangler or Grand Cherokee. The story is about you understanding the real numbers that go into every option of your purchasing. So ideally, you want to get to this summary table where you know exactly what it will cost you to finance or lease or even keep your existing car. And with those numbers, you can confidently go to the dealer and negotiate, not be caught off guard because you've done your research. So please leave a comment if I made a mistake in calculations. If you found it useful, say it as well. And the next video is gonna be about going to the dealership, negotiating, not be getting caught up in the emotional side of negotiations, and getting the price.